and thank you. And this wonderful, we're all crushed together, knee to knee here. Wine's cozy. One guest has gone, another one comes. Now, you're Victor Menotti, right? Well, I think the best thing is to let you tell us. I'll just remind everyone, it's Second Life. We're in Second Life. We're in Poznan at the International Climate Change Talks. One Climate brings you this nightly broadcast, and Victor Menotti, it's your night. So, what are you doing here?
We're here at this conference seeing it as really the foremost process in the world to transition the global economy to a low-carbon economy. And we're very concerned that this process has to really create the appropriate economic infrastructure, the framework to allow that transition. So, I mean, ultimately, cutting carbon is about the right framework for trade and investment and finance and technology transfer, or it's not going to work. So what you had today was we put out a release of a statement by over 160 organizations, mostly from the developing world, that are calling for a United Nations Global Climate Fund directly under the convention, whatever comes out of Copenhagen. And specifically something that is not located in the World Bank, which is where currently my country's government, the U.S., and the British government also have been trying to put things. But we think that the history is clear that the World Bank is not the savior of the planet or the savior of the poor. In fact, they still continue to fund fossil fuels development almost 19 to 1 for every dollar that's put in there. So we don't think that in terms of governance and in terms of it being donor-driven, this is really what is needed to deal with this planetary emergency. What we lay out in the statement, which is available on our website, ifg.org, is a set of principles that a fund should live up to. And it has to do with where the money comes from, who's going to pay, how that money is going to be managed, who's at the table, and what it's going to be spent on.
Okay, can I just butt in here, because it is a complicated issue here. There's a lot of funds, there's a lot of money, there's the World Bank, there's an adaptation fund being set up now, there's the UN, there's all sorts of things going on, there's bilateral aid. So what is it you're proposing that is so unique? Are you proposing are you trying to get more money, or are you proposing a more effective way of delivering finance that will help developing countries adapt to climate change? What's so unique about it?
More money, better managed, and more accountable, right, is what we're after. And not centralized, but coordinated. We think it's very important that it's under the convention of the parties, the conference of the parties, governed by this body here, whose mandate is climate protection, right, and sustainable development. And it's not that every dollar or pound or euro or yen needs to go through the United Nations, but there does need to be a common framework that really governs how overseas development assistance, aid, whatever financial assistance and technological assistance governments transfer north to south is coherent and not working at cross purposes.
And the principle, is this correct, that the principle of the World Bank basically is the more dollars you put in, the more votes you get, whereas the UN is much more of a one country, one vote system, so plus it's a bank. That's true. Yes, that's true. So, but now the problem is that most Western countries have resisted many calls in the past for the bank's powers to be curtailed, and the bank is rather chameleon-like, and every time anything happens it seems to reinvent itself and say, we'll take on AIDS, we'll do. It's an institution that likes existing, I guess, like other institutions. So is it realistic to make this proposal? Have you got some governments behind you in developing countries or elsewhere? And what's going to happen in the US that's rather, many people think it has a sort of grip on the World Bank, so why would it want to lose it?
Good question. In fact, our proposal is building off of a proposal by the G77 plus China, which is actually a coalition of over 130 countries now. So they want the governance structure, the financial governance of climate, to be under this convention. In terms of the donor countries, Europe, Japan, United States, I can speak at least for the United States, when often, as you know, Europe hides behind whatever the U.S. wants to do in these cases. We are in transition, our government. We have a new president. We have a much more progressive Congress coming in. We've been talking with a lot of the climate policy makers who are here and their staff who will be in the next government. And I have to say, I'm very encouraged. I mean, they're not shutting this down. The current Bush team negotiators are not being responsive, and the few things that they are saying are negative to this proposal. But that's not the case necessarily with who we're seeing from other very prominent leaders in our Congress who, all we ask is that they're open at this point, have an open mind to other alternatives. I mean, you're right. The World Bank, it was gasping its last breath. It's in that and the IMF are in a crisis of legitimacy together with the World Trade Organization, and now this is its new lease on life. If it can somehow create a new purpose for itself, it can do climate. It can do hunger. But that's not necessarily the mandate. It doesn't necessarily have the competency to do that. And it's just its track record almost tells you that it's almost incapable of change. So we know it does have a lot of expertise in terms of moving money, and we need to be able to do that. That's probably people's biggest concern. And as well, we need criteria in place that will make sure that the money is going to where it's really supposed to be going. That's the biggest job we have in the U.S. is to convince our Congress that you can trust a UN mechanism.
Yeah, not a small job, I think.
Well, we do have good examples with the Montreal Protocol. Its fund, it's been very successful. In fact, we want to build on that model, as well as the Global Fund for AIDS, which allows direct access for community organizations to funds for prevention and education, and that's exactly one of the principles we're talking about. Communities want to access those funds.
Okay, a question coming in from Second Life. How can we trust anyone who holds the purse strings of any major fund these days, especially unelected, and at a global level?
You shouldn't, which is why we need citizen oversight and involvement.
No, sorry, that is I think that when I heard this proposal, that was to me one of the key points. Just to explain that it's not just a conventional bank, it's not just even a conventional fund. There is going to be civil society representation or oversight in some way or other. That's what you're proposing.
That's exactly what we're calling for, that civil society will have seats or a seat at the governance board, and what some people call the third superpower in the world, the global movement of movements, will be making sure that this bank actually works for people and the planet.
Well, it's a tremendously radical aim to go for, I agree. We've answered that question. What was I going to ask you? There was another question from the. I'm so sorry. I'm in danger of losing my voice. I'm going to cough. Sorry, viewers.
We've all got the cough cold.
We have got the cold. It's awful. So, do you think this is the bottom line here? What are you going to do? Are you going to campaign for it? Because the previous speaker, who's very close to the negotiations, has pointed out that every proposal really has got to be in within the next 24, 48 hours officially, because next year's negotiations are based on the proposals that have been tabled by the end of Poznan. And he said maybe for the US, because it's a change of administration, Obama will be allowed to put some US things in, and because the US is a special country, they'll be given a little some grace. But is it realistic? Will you be actually able to convince anyone to get this tabled for the negotiations in time for instance, Copenhagen to discuss it?
Well, I mean, the idea has already been tabled. It was tabled a few months ago at the last intersessional meeting in Accra, Ghana, when the G77 plus China proposal. What we're doing here is launching that campaign, engaging the anti-debt movements throughout the developing world, who have gotten debt cancellation. They've shown they can move these multilateral financial institutions. We're bringing that people power into this road to Copenhagen, to mobilize in countries, including in the developed countries that will be the donors to these things. Will we convince them? That's, history's to be made. That's the work we all have to do.
Okay, that's great. Perhaps we should end it there. There's strange things going on over here, and we've got one last visitor to try and squeeze in. So thank you very much. You've given a plug for the website, haven't you, so people can go to it. Where can they find out more information about this proposal?
It's on our website for International Forum on Globalization. It's just ifg.org. We're based in California.
Okay, that's great. Thanks so much for coming in. Yeah, thank you.